The alarm screamed through Defense Station Omega-7 like a dying animal. Lieutenant Vextai dropped his energy drink and rushed to the communication center. His blue skin turned pale as he read the message scrolling across the screen. Colony World New Haven under attack. Void Swarm confirmed. Requesting immediate assistance. Casualties mounting. Vextai felt his heart skip a beat. The Void Swarm. Every species in the galaxy knew that name and feared it. They were parasites that ate entire worlds, leaving nothing but empty husks floating in space. No one had ever successfully fought them off completely. The message kept coming. Human colony. Population 40,000. Defense forces holding but need backup. Please respond, humans. Vextai had heard about them but never met one. The Galactic Council called them a developing species. Their technology was supposed to be basic. Their weapons were simple. Most aliens thought humans were just another weak race that would disappear when real danger came. But something about the message bothered Vextai. Most distress calls begged for help. This one sounded different. It was calm. Professional. Like they were asking for backup, not rescue. Commander Zill both burst into the room, his 6 arms moving in panic. Vextai, get the fleet ready. We leave in 1 hour. Sir, are we really going to help humans fight the Void Swarm? Orders from High Command. Apparently these humans have been holding off a swarm attack for 3 days. 3 days, Vextai. Most species fall in 3 hours. The journey to New Haven took 2 days at maximum speed. Vextai spent the time reading files about humans. They came from a world called Earth. Their history was full of wars. They fought each other constantly for thousands of years. The report said they were violent but not particularly smart or strong. When the fleet dropped out of hyperspace near New Haven, Vextai expected to find a dead world. Instead, he saw something impossible. The planet was scarred and burning in places, but it was alive. Human ships flew in formation around their world, small and crude-looking but moving with perfect coordination. The swarm bioships that should have been feeding on the planet were floating dead in space. This is Captain Jinho Kim of New Haven Defense Force, a voice crackled over the radio. Thanks for coming. We could use some help cleaning up the mess. The voice was calm, tired but not desperate, not afraid. When Vextai beamed down to the planet's surface, he saw something that changed his understanding of humans forever. The landing zone was a crater surrounded by twisted metal and strange organic matter. Human soldiers stood guard with weapons that looked like they were built in a workshop, not a factory. Captain Jinho Kim walked toward them. He was shorter than Vextai, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. His uniform was torn and dirty, but he stood straight and proud. Lieutenant Vextai? Kim asked, reading from a small device. Welcome to New Haven. Sorry about the mess. Vextai looked around. The mess was hundreds of dead swarm creatures. Each one was the size of a ground vehicle with sharp claws and acid-filled sacks. They were scattered across the ground like broken toys. How many did you kill? Vextai asked. This wave? About 300. Total over the last 3 days? Maybe 15,000. Vextai's translator made a small error noise. 15,000? That was impossible. The swarm traveled in groups of thousands, but they were nearly invincible. Their bioarmor could stop most energy weapons. Their acid could melt through ship hulls. A human woman approached them. She was smaller than Kim, but moved like a predator. Captain, we've got movement in Sector 7. Looks like stragglers from the last attack. Thank you, Sergeant Park. Take your squad and clean them up. Sergeant Myun Park nodded and jogged away, calling to other humans. They grabbed their crude weapons and disappeared into the ruins of what had been a city. Your people seem very calm for survivors of a swarm attack, Vextai said. Kim smiled, but there was something cold in his eyes. We're not survivors, Lieutenant. We're hunters. The swarm made a mistake when they came here. What mistake? They thought we were prey. Kim led Vextai through the remains of the city. Every street corner had been turned into a killing ground. Humans had used their own buildings as weapons, collapsing them onto swarm creatures. They had filled sewers with explosive traps. They had turned children's playgrounds into sniper nests. Your weapons, Vextai said, pointing at a human carrying what looked like a metal tube with wires wrapped around it. They're so basic. They work, Kim said simply. Sometimes the simplest answer is the best one. A swarm warrior has bioarmor that stops energy weapons, but it can't stop a steel rod moving at 3,000 meters per second. They passed a group of humans working on something that made Vextai's stomach turn. They were cutting open dead swarm creatures, studying their insides. One human, a young man, was taking notes while another woman dissected a swarm brain. "We need to understand them," Kim explained, seeing Vextai's expression. "Know your enemy. Learn how they think. Find their weak spots, but they're already dead. Why keep studying them?" Kim stopped walking and looked directly at Vextai. For a moment, the human's friendly mask slipped, and Vextai saw something that made his blood run cold. "Because they'll come back. The swarm always comes back, and when they do, we'll be ready." An explosion echoed from across the city. Kim touched a device on his ear and listened for a moment. Sergeant Park found a nest. 67 confirmed kills. He said it the same way someone might talk about the weather. Commander Daeho Lee appeared from a nearby building. He was older than Kim, with gray hair and lines around his eyes. But those eyes burned with the same cold fire. "Captain Kim, the Council wants to know our casualty count. 17 wounded, 3 seriously. No deaths today. And enemy casualties? Today? 412 confirmed. Maybe 50 more that we can't count because there wasn't enough left to identify." Vextai felt dizzy. In one day, these humans had killed nearly 500 swarm creatures and lost nobody. The most successful Galactic Defense Force ever recorded against the swarm had managed to kill 30 before being overrun. As the sun set over New Haven, Vextai watched human children playing in the ruins. They laughed and ran between the corpses of creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. To them, the dead monsters were just part of the landscape. That night, as he tried to sleep in the human barracks, Vextai heard something that would haunt him forever. In the distance, Sergeant Park was singing a lullaby to her daughter. It was gentle and sweet, but between verses he could hear the sound of humans sharpening their weapons, preparing for tomorrow's hunt. He began to understand that he wasn't witnessing the survival of a weak species. He was watching predators who had found their perfect prey. The next morning, Vextai woke to the sound of metal being hammered. He walked outside to find humans everywhere, building things, not repairing their city but creating new weapons. They worked with their hands, welding and cutting and assembling devices that looked nothing like standard galactic technology. Private Sunho Choi stood over a contraption that defied everything Vextai knew about physics. It looked like someone had taken 3 different energy weapons, torn them apart, and stuck the pieces together with metal wire and hope. "What is that?" Vextai asked. Sunho looked up, his face streaked with oil and sweat. "Plasma cannon. Well, sort of. It shouldn't work, but it does." He grinned. "Human engineering. We don't always follow the rules. The rules exist for safety reasons. Safety is staying alive while the other guy dies. This thing can cut through a swarm bioship like paper." Vextai examined the weapon more closely. By all known principles, it should explode the moment someone turned it on. The power coupling was wrong. The cooling system was improvised. The targeting system was held together with tape. "Have you tested it?" "Yesterday. Took out 6 swarm flyers with 1 shot. Sunho patted the weapon like it was a pet. She's ugly, but she's effective." Captain Kim appeared beside them. "Lieutenant, we have a problem. Our scouts report a large swarm force heading this way. Bigger than anything we've seen." "How big?" 10,000 bioships. Maybe more. Vextai felt his blood turn cold. 10,000. Even with the galactic fleet backing them up, those numbers were impossible to fight. "We should evacuate," Vextai said. "Get the civilians to safety and call for more backup." Kim looked at him strangely. "Evacuate? This is our home. But 10,000 swarm ships and we'll die like all the others." The way Kim said it made Vextai shiver. There was no doubt in his voice, no fear. Just cold certainty. Over the next few hours, Vextai watched the humans prepare. They didn't panic. They didn't argue about strategy. Each person knew exactly what to do. Children helped carry ammunition. Elderly humans operated communication equipment. Everyone had a job in the killing machine the colony had become. Corporal Hyeri Nam was doing something that made Vextai's stomach turn. She had captured a live swarm drone the day before, and now she was questioning it. The creature was strapped to a metal table, its bioarmor cracked open to expose the soft flesh underneath. "Please." The creature buzzed in broken galactic standard. "Pain." "Stop pain. Tell me about your ship formations," Hyeri said calmly, holding a small electric device. "How many bioships in each attack wave?" "Cannot. Hive mind forbids." Hyeri activated the device. The swarm creature screamed. Vextai stepped forward. "This violates the Galactic Convention on..." The Galactic Convention doesn't apply to species that eat children, HFY said without looking away from her prisoner. This thing participated in attacks on 17 colony worlds. How many kids do you think it killed before it came here? The swarm creature's eyes were filled with pain and something else. Fear. HFY had never seen a swarm creature show fear before. I'll ask again, HFY said, her voice gentle as a teacher speaking to a student. Ship formations. How do you coordinate attacks? Secondary. Secondary mines control. Groups of 50. Good. Where are the secondary mines located on the bioships? The creature's resistance broke. For the next hour, it told HFY everything. Ship designs, communication methods, attack patterns, weaknesses. When it was finished, HFY made notes in a small book. Thank you, she said politely. Then she killed the creature with a quick injection. Information like this saves human lives. HFY stared at her. How can you be so calm about torture? HFY looked at him with eyes that belonged on someone much older. My daughter was on the first transport off-world when the swarm attacked. She was 6 years old. The transport didn't make it. She walked away, leaving HFY alone with his thoughts. The swarm attack came at sunset. HFY stood in the human command center, watching displays that showed the enemy approaching. 10,000 bioships just as the scouts had reported. Each one was the size of a building, covered in living armor and armed with weapons that could level cities. All units, this is Captain Kim. The human's voice came over the radio. Remember, we fought them before and won. Today will be no different. The first wave hit the planet's outer defenses. HFY expected to see the careful defensive strategy his own people would use. Instead, he watched humans do something insane. They attacked first. Human ships launched themselves at the swarm fleet like bullets. They were outnumbered 100 to 1, but they didn't seem to care. Their crude weapons tore into bioships that should have been invulnerable. On the ground, Sunho's improvised plasma cannon opened fire. The beam of energy, ugly and unstable, punched through 3 swarm bioships in a single shot. Around him, humans with weapons built in garages and workshops were killing creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. How? HFY whispered. Sergeant Park stood beside him, watching the battle through binoculars. We studied them. Every attack for 3 months we learned something new. Where they're weak, how they think, what makes them afraid. The swarm doesn't feel fear. Everything feels fear when it's dying. On the display screen, HFY watched something impossible. The swarm bioships were retreating, actually running away from human weapons that looked like they were built by children. They're leaving, he said in disbelief. No. Kim's voice came over the radio. They're regrouping, trying to figure out what went wrong. But we already know what went wrong. What? HFY's voice answered from across the room. They expected to fight prey. Instead, they found predators. The second wave came an hour later. This time, the swarm tried different tactics. Instead of direct assault, they attempted to surround the planet and attack from all directions at once. It didn't matter. The humans were ready. They had turned their planet into a weapon. Every moon had hidden missile launchers. Every asteroid in the system had been rigged with explosives. Even the space debris from earlier battles had been weaponized. HFY watched human children, some barely old enough to walk, helping to load ammunition for weapons that could crack mountains. They laughed while they worked like it was a game. When the battle was over, the space around New Haven was filled with dead bioships. The swarm force that should have consumed the planet was floating in pieces, their biomatter slowly dissolving in the vacuum of space. Casualty report, Kim asked over the radio. 12 wounded, 1 seriously, came the response. No deaths. Enemy casualties? Hard to count. Maybe 8,000 confirmed kills. The rest retreated. 8,000. In one battle, these humans had killed more swarm creatures than the entire Galactic Defense Force had managed in 50 years. That night, HFY sat with Captain Kim on the roof of a damaged building looking up at the stars. The space above them glowed with the light of burning bioships. How do you do it? HFY asked. How do you stay so calm? Kim was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was different. Softer, but somehow more frightening. We're not calm, Lieutenant. We're focused. There's a difference. Focused on what? Kim pointed at the burning ships above them. Making sure they never hurt anyone again. Ever. The way he said it made HFY realize something terrible. The humans weren't just defending their world. They were learning to hunt, and they were getting very, very good at it. 3 days after the second attack, Sergeant Wu Jin Kang approached Vextai with an invitation that would change everything he thought he knew about warfare. "The captain wants to show you something," Wu Jin said. His smile was friendly, but his eyes held secrets. "Something important." They walked through the city ruins toward a building that looked normal from the outside. Just another damaged structure among hundreds. But when they went inside, Vextai discovered it was an elevator shaft that went down much deeper than any building should. "How far down does this go?" Vextai asked as they descended. "Far enough," Wu Jin replied. "We've been busy." The elevator stopped at a level marked Research Division, authorized personnel only. The doors opened to reveal a corridor lined with laboratories. Through the glass windows, Vextai could see humans working with equipment he didn't recognize. "What is this place?" "Where we learned how to win." Dr. Sora Jung met them at the first laboratory. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes, but she moved with the same predatory grace all the humans seemed to share. "Lieutenant Vextai," she said, reading his name from a tablet. "Captain Kim said you wanted to understand how we fight the swarm so effectively. Yes, your success rate is impossible. Nothing is impossible if you're willing to pay the right price." She gestured for them to follow her. "Let me show you what that price looks like." The first room contained dozens of tanks filled with green liquid. Inside each tank floated pieces of swarm biotechnology. Claws, armor plates, organs that pulsed with their own light. But some tanks held something worse. Living swarm creatures cut open and kept alive while machines monitored their vital signs. "We've been capturing them for months," Dr. Young explained. "Every raid, every attack, we take a few alive. We study them, learn how they work." Vextai stared at a tank containing what looked like a swarm brain, still functioning while electrodes measured its activity. This violates every medical ethics protocol in the galaxy." "The galaxy's ethics protocols assume your enemy follows the same rules," Dr. Young said calmly. "The swarm eats children alive to feed their bioships. They dissolve entire populations into nutrient paste. They don't deserve our mercy." She led them to another room where humans in protective suits worked with samples of living swarm tissue. The tissue writhed and tried to attack the researchers, but they handled it like it was just another laboratory specimen. "We discovered something interesting," Dr. Young continued. "The swarm's greatest strength is also their greatest weakness. Their hive mind? Exactly. They share thoughts, emotions, even pain across vast distances. It makes them perfectly coordinated in battle. But it also means that if you know how to hurt one of them, you can hurt all of them." She showed Vextai a computer screen filled with biological data. "We've developed a virus. Not a biological virus, a mental one. It attacks their shared consciousness, turns their coordination into chaos." Vextai felt sick. "You're talking about psychological warfare on a species level. We're talking about survival." Dr. Young's voice stayed perfectly calm, like she was discussing the weather. "To defeat monsters, sometimes you must understand them so completely that you become worse than they are." The next room was even more disturbing. Human scientists were performing experiments on live swarm creatures, not just studying them but actively torturing them to see how their hive mind reacted to pain and fear. "We learned that the swarm feels collective pain," Dr. Young explained as they watched a researcher inject something into a writhing creature. "When one suffers, they all suffer. So we developed weapons that maximize suffering. That's evil." Dr. Young stopped walking and looked directly at Vextai. For the first time since they'd met, she showed emotion. But it wasn't shame or guilt. It was cold, burning anger. "Evil," she said quietly. "I watched the swarm dissolve my grandson alive. They kept him conscious so his screams would terrify other children. They ate him slowly, piece by piece, while he begged for his mother." Her voice never changed tone, but her hands clenched into fists. "Tell me, Lieutenant, what would you do to the creatures that did that?" Vextai had no answer. The final room contained their masterpiece, a weapon that looked like a simple metal sphere about the size of a human head. It sat on a pedestal surrounded by warning signs in several languages. "What does it do?" Vextai asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. "It broadcasts a signal directly into the swarm's collective consciousness," Dr. Young said. "The signal carries a very specific message. Not information, pure concentrated terror. Terror. Imagine the worst fear you've ever felt. Then multiply it by 1,000 and spread it across every swarm creature within 50 light-years simultaneously. They don't just feel afraid, they experience absolute overwhelming horror that makes them unable to think or fight or even move. Sergeant Wu Jin smiled. We tested it on a captured swarm patrol. 3 bioships, maybe 60 creatures total. They went completely insane within minutes, started attacking each other, tearing themselves apart just to make the fear stop. And this is what you plan to use against the main swarm fleet? This is what we already used, Dr. Young said. Why do you think the last 2 attacks failed so badly? We didn't just defeat them, we broke their minds. Vextai stared at the weapon. Such a small thing to cause such massive damage. How many swarm creatures have you tested this on? Does it matter? They're not people, Lieutenant. They're parasites that eat worlds. But as they walked back through the laboratories, Vextai noticed something that made his blood run cold. The humans weren't just developing weapons to use against the swarm. They were developing weapons that could work against any species. He saw research notes about Althurian nervous systems, files on crystalline defensive capabilities, detailed studies of every major species in the Galactic Council. Why do you have information about other species? He asked. Dr. Jung followed his gaze to the files. Scientific curiosity. We like to understand how things work. But these are weapons research files. Knowledge is knowledge, Lieutenant. You never know when it might be useful. On the elevator ride back to the surface, Sergeant Wu Jin was quiet for most of the trip. But just before they reached the top, he spoke. You look worried. I am worried. About us? Vextai nodded. Wu Jin's smile was friendly but somehow threatening. Good, fear keeps you alive. The swarm forgot that, and look what happened to them. Back on the surface, Vextai walked through the human city with new eyes. The children playing in the ruins weren't just innocent survivors. They were the next generation of the most effective predators the galaxy had ever seen. The elderly humans weren't just wise elders. They were teachers passing on knowledge of how to break an enemy's mind. That night, he sent a coded message to Galactic Command. Humans have defeated Swarm using advanced psychological warfare. Recommend immediate evaluation of human military capabilities and intentions. The response came back 12 hours later. Continue observation. Report any developments. But as Vextai watched human children learning to field strip weapons that could drive entire species insane, he wondered if it was already too late for observation. The humans had learned to fight monsters by becoming something worse than monsters, and they were just getting started. The alarm that woke Vextai at dawn was different from any he'd heard before. Not the sharp warning of a single attack, but a deep, continuous sound that seemed to come from the planet itself. Major Kyungmin Han stood in the command center, surrounded by displays showing space around New Haven. What Vextai saw made his heart stop beating for a moment. Ships. Thousands and thousands of bioships, stretching across space like a living carpet. The largest swarm fleet anyone had ever recorded was descending on the human colony. How many? Vextai whispered. Conservative estimate? 50,000 bioships, maybe more. Major Han spoke like he was discussing lunch plans. Looks like we got their attention. 50,000. The number was so large it seemed meaningless. Every military force in the galaxy combined couldn't fight 50,000 swarm bioships. The humans should be evacuating. They should be begging for help. They should be panicking. Instead, they were smiling. All units, this is Major Han. The human's voice carried over the communication system. Operation Scorpion is now active. Remember, this is what we've been preparing for. Operation Scorpion. Vextai had never heard of it, but something about the name made him nervous. Private Minjio appeared at his shoulder, carrying a communication device that was receiving signals from across the star system. What's Operation Scorpion? Vextai asked her. Minji's smile was the most frightening thing he'd seen yet. You know how scorpions hunt, right? They don't just kill their prey. They paralyze it first, then eat it alive while it can't move. You're comparing the swarm to prey? No, sir. We're the scorpions. Major Han gestured for Vextai to join him at the main display. Lieutenant, your people think the swarm is unstoppable because they've never understood what the swarm really is. What do you mean? The swarm isn't just a collection of creatures. It's a single organism spread across millions of bioships. Every creature, every ship, every weapon is connected through their hive mind. They think as one, act as one, feel as one. Yes, that's what makes them so dangerous. That's what makes them vulnerable. Han touched a control, and the display changed to show the entire star system. Red dots marked the incoming swarm fleet. But Vextai also saw blue dots scattered throughout the system. Hundreds of them. What are those? Human colonies. Mining stations. Research outposts. Agricultural worlds. Han's voice was perfectly calm. All abandoned 3 months ago. Abandoned? We evacuated everyone to the core worlds, left the outer colonies empty. Han paused, watching the swarm fleet moving toward the blue dots. Well, mostly empty. Private Minjio held up her communication device. Sir, Outpost 7 reports swarm landing parties have begun feeding operations. Excellent. Begin Phase 2. Vextai watched in horror as the display showed swarm creatures spreading across the abandoned human colonies, doing what they always did, consuming everything they found to feed their bioships. You're letting them eat your worlds. We're letting them eat our bait. The first explosion lit up the display like a small star. Then another. Then dozens more as the abandoned colonies began detonating one by one. What did you do? Major Han's smile was cold as space. We rigged every abandoned facility with the most powerful explosives we could build. But that's not the real weapon. Then what is? The real weapon is what the explosions release into their bioships. On the communication system, reports started coming in from across the star system. Colony 7 successfully detonated. Swarm bioships showing signs of distress. Mining Station 12 is gone. Enemy forces exhibiting erratic behavior. Research Outpost 4 detonated on schedule. Swarm creatures appear to be attacking each other. Vextai stared at the display as chaos spread through the massive swarm fleet. Bioships that had been moving in perfect formation were now flying in random directions, some attacking their own kind. The explosions released our psychological warfare virus directly into their bioships, Major Han explained. But this version is different from what we used before, stronger, more targeted. What does it do? Private Minjio answered, her voice filled with professional pride. It doesn't just make them afraid. It makes them remember every creature they've ever killed, every child they've eaten, every world they've destroyed. All at once, all the time, with perfect clarity. That's torture on a species level. That's justice. The swarm fleet was tearing itself apart. Bioships crashed into each other as their pilots went insane with guilt and horror they had never been designed to feel. Creatures that had never known remorse were drowning in the memories of their victims. But some of the swarm ships were still functional, still heading toward New Haven itself. Major Han watched them approach and activated another communication channel. All defensive positions. Prepare for final phase. What happened next changed Vextai's understanding of human warfare forever. Instead of waiting for the swarm to attack, the humans launched every ship they had directly into the enemy fleet, not in formation. Not with tactics. They simply flew their crude, improvised spacecraft straight at bioships that outweighed them 1,000 to 1 and started shooting. This is suicide, Vextai said. No, Major Han replied. This is mathematics. The human ships were dying. Vextai could see them being destroyed by swarm weapons, torn apart by creatures that could crack mountains. But for every human ship that fell, 3 or 4 bioships went with it. How? We've been studying swarm bioships for months. We know exactly where to hit them to cause maximum damage. Our pilots are trained to accept casualties that would be unthinkable to other species. You're sacrificing your own people. We're investing lives to save lives. Every human pilot who dies today prevents the swarm from killing thousands of civilians tomorrow. On the communication system, human pilots reported their attacks with the same calm professionalism their military used for everything. Direct hit on bioship 77 Alpha. My engines are gone, but I'm taking 2 more with me. Ramming attack successful. Bioship cluster neutralized. It's been an honor serving with you all. This is Pilot Park. I count 15 enemy ships dead. Tell my family I got them all. The voices were calm, determined, not afraid. Private Minji. Oh was crying. But she kept working at her communication station, coordinating the attacks that were killing her friends. Why aren't you stopping this? Vextai demanded. Because it's working, Major Han said simply. And it was working. The combination of psychological warfare and sacrificial tactics was devastating the swarm fleet. Bioships that had conquered worlds were being destroyed by humans flying weapons built in garage workshops. But the cost was terrible. Half the human fleet was gone. Maybe more. Casualty report, Major Han requested. 60% of our combat ships lost, came the reply. But enemy fleet is down to maybe 10,000 functional bioships. 10,000. From 50,000 to 10,000 in a matter of hours. Acceptable losses, Major Han said. Continue the attack. Vextai grabbed the human's arm. Acceptable? You've lost thousands of people. Major Han looked at him with eyes that belonged in a graveyard. Lieutenant, the swarm has killed billions of people across hundreds of worlds. If we have to sacrifice thousands to stop them forever, that's a trade we'll make every time. You're talking about your own species. I'm talking about the survival of every other species in the galaxy. The swarm ends here. Today, no matter what it costs. The battle continued for 6 more hours. When it finally ended, space around New Haven looked like a ship graveyard. Dead bioships floated everywhere, their hulls cracked and their biomatter leaking into the void. The humans had lost almost their entire fleet. Of the 1,000 ships they'd started with, maybe 50 were still functional. But they had accomplished something that should have been impossible. They had broken the largest swarm fleet in recorded history. That night, as reports came in from across the galaxy, Vextai realized the true scope of what the humans had done. The psychological virus hadn't just affected the fleet attacking New Haven. It had spread through the swarm's collective consciousness to every bioship in the galaxy. Everywhere. Swarm creatures were going insane with the memories of their victims. The species that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries was tearing itself apart from the inside. The swarm was finished. But as Vextai watched human children playing games about hunting monsters, he wondered what the galaxy had unleashed to defeat them. 2 weeks after the Great Battle, Captain Sung-Ho Yoon found Vextai sitting alone in the ruins of what had once been New Haven's Central Park. The alien was staring at a memorial the humans had built, a simple stone wall with thousands of names carved into it. The names of everyone the swarm killed here, Sung-Ho said, sitting down beside him. We wanted to remember them. All these people. Vextai traced one of the names with his finger. How do you live with losing so many? By making sure they didn't die for nothing. Sung-Ho was different from the other humans Vextai had met. Older, quieter, with scars on his hands that spoke of years working with dangerous weapons. He carried himself like someone who had seen too much death. Captain, can I ask you something? Sure. Are you proud of what you've done? Sung-Ho was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was tired. Pride is the wrong word. We did what needed to be done. The swarm is finished. Every bioship in the galaxy is dead or dying. No more worlds will be consumed. No more children will be eaten alive. But the cost was high. But the alternative was extinction. Not just for humanity, but for every species the swarm would have found next. They sat in silence, watching human children play among the memorial stones. The children laughed and ran, but even their games were different now. They played hunt the monster and defend the colony. War had become part of their childhood. The weapon you used, Vextai said. The one that made them remember their victims. How did you know it would work? Sung-Ho smiled, but there was no happiness in it, because we understand guilt better than any other species. We've been carrying the weight of our own actions for thousands of years. What do you mean? Look at human history, Lieutenant. We've been at war with ourselves since we learned to make tools. We know what it feels like to kill. We know what it feels like to regret. We know how memories can destroy you from the inside. A human woman approached them. Lieutenant Yoon Bae carried a tablet filled with reports, but her expression was troubled. Captain Yoon, we have the final analysis of the swarm extinction. Total casualties? Every bioship in the galaxy. The virus spread faster than we expected. The entire species is gone. Vextai felt something that might have been relief. The greatest threat the galaxy had ever known was finally dead. Any survivors? Sung-Ho asked. A few isolated creatures on remote worlds, but without the hive mind to coordinate them. They're just animals now. Dangerous animals, but not an organized threat. Good, what about the other reports? Lieutenant Unji's expression grew darker. That's more complicated. She handed the tablet to Sung-Ho, who read through it quickly. His face showed no emotion, but Vextai noticed his hands tighten on the device. What is it? Vextai asked. Intelligence reports from across the galaxy, Sung-Ho said. It seems our success against the swarm has attracted attention. What kind of attention? Lieutenant Unji answered. Several species are asking questions about human military capabilities. The Crystalline Empire wants to know how we developed our psychological warfare techniques. The Vorthan Confederacy is requesting details about our weapons technology. That's natural curiosity. No, Sung-Ho said quietly. That's fear. They're afraid of us now. Vextai felt a chill run down his spine. Why would they be afraid? You saved the galaxy. Because we proved that any species can be destroyed if you understand them well enough. We didn't just defeat the swarm, we made them extinct in 2 weeks. Lieutenant Yunji pulled up another file on her tablet. There's more. Some species are forming defensive alliances. They're calling it protection against human expansion. Human expansion? Seung-ho stood up and walked to the memorial wall. He placed his hand on one of the names. A child who had died in the first swarm attack. They think we did this for conquest. They don't understand that we did it for her. For all of them. But surely they know you were defending yourselves. Do they? Look at it from their perspective, Lieutenant. Humans appeared on the galactic scene a few decades ago. Weak, primitive, barely worth noticing. Then the most dangerous species in the galaxy attacks us and we don't just survive. We completely destroy them using weapons that violate every known principle of warfare. Lieutenant Yunji nodded. They're wondering what we might do to species that aren't trying to eat us. Vextai felt sick. You're not planning to attack anyone else, are you? Of course not, Seung-ho said. We're not conquerors. We're protectors. Then why are they afraid? Seung-ho turned to look at him, and Vextai saw something in the human's eyes that made him understand the galaxy's fear. Because we're very good at killing things that threaten us, and after what the swarm did to our families, our definition of threat might be broader than other species are comfortable with. A young human soldier approached them. Corporal Donghyun Kim saluted smartly. Captain, we have a message from Galactic Command. They want to schedule a meeting about human integration into the Defense Corps. Integration? They want us to share our weapons technology, train their forces in our tactics, help them develop their own psychological warfare capabilities. Seung-ho laughed, but the sound was cold. They want to learn how to do what we did. Is that bad? Lieutenant Vextai, what do you think happens when every species in the galaxy has weapons designed to cause maximum psychological damage? When everyone knows how to turn a species' own mind against itself? Vextai hadn't considered that. The humans had developed their weapons to fight the swarm, but those same weapons could work against any species. You could refuse to share the technology. We could, Lieutenant Yunji agreed, but then they'd be even more afraid of us. The only species in the galaxy with weapons that can extinct entire civilizations in weeks. So what's the solution? Seung-ho looked back at the memorial wall at the names of all the people the swarm had killed. There isn't one. We made a choice to save the galaxy, and now we have to live with the consequences. What consequences? Everyone is afraid of us. Even our allies. Even you. Vextai started to deny it, then realized he couldn't. He was afraid of the humans. Not because they were evil, but because they were so efficient at destruction. The children, he said, looking at the human kids playing in the ruins. What will you teach them? To protect what matters, Seung-ho said. To never let anyone hurt their families the way the swarm hurt ours. And if that means destroying entire species? Seung-ho met his eyes directly. Then that's what it means. That evening, Vextai walked through New Haven one last time before his transport arrived. The humans were rebuilding their city, but it was different now. Harder. Every building was designed to be a fortress. Every playground could become a weapons depot. Every school taught children how to identify threats and eliminate them. At the spaceport, Captain Kim waited to see him off. Safe travels, Lieutenant. Thank you for fighting beside us. Captain, can I ask you something? Do you regret what you had to become to defeat the swarm? Kim was quiet for a moment. Do you regret being alive? What? If we hadn't done what we did, the swarm would still be out there. Still eating worlds, still killing children. Your world might have been next. I understand that, but then you understand why we can't regret it. We became what we needed to become. The galaxy is safer because of what we sacrificed. As Vexitai's transport lifted off from New Haven, he looked down at the human colony one last time. It looked peaceful from above, like any other world recovering from war. But he knew the truth. Down there lived the most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever produced. They had saved everyone by becoming something that everyone feared. And they were teaching their children to be just like them.